Witt Ranch is a 440-acre, thriving farm in the southern Cascades, with a commitment to land preservation and to sustainable farm and forest management. Owners Suzanne Willow and Lanita Witt run their operations entirely off-grid, offering farm stays in addition to their goat and vegetable business. They have seen significant change in temperatures in their 32 years on the land, and have witnessed the migration of mourning doves, quail, and other species up to the cooler climes at their 4,600 feet elevation. Similar, they say, to the vital animal corridors that the expansion of the Cascades-Siskiyou Monument will provide to allow for animal and plant adaptation and survival as our climate continues to change.
In our first 10 years here, it wasn't uncommon to have sub-zero weather, and we've not had sub-zero weather in probably 20 years, I would say.
Yeah, and 2-0 or just above it, but our lowest recorded when we were first here was -18.
But are more challenges for an organic ranch than a traditional ranch?
I don't think so. I think it's easier because organic, both organic animal husbandry and organic vegetable farming, and our entire land is 445 acres. It's all organic certified. I think it's actually easier because it's a big part of organic is taking care of the soil, which makes for healthy microbes, which makes for healthy gases going in and out of the soil, and makes for healthy animals. And the animals are using our native forage. So I think if anything it's much easier. If one were using chemical inputs, I think that would be much harder to adapt. And so basically building soil and keeping soil healthy and keeping our animals healthy so they have less impact, putting them on different pastures at different times so they have actually more positive impact and less negative impact, I think is much easier. And that's part of organic farming.
Cows have an impact on the climate, and cows are a part of climate change, and they happen to be the protein source that came with the Euro-Americans. Otherwise it was bison and venison and rabbit, and probably a little porcupine thrown in here and there.
One of the other things that I know that you have mentioned doing is there was logging in this area, and you've taken some steps to mitigate the effects of that. Could you just describe what you've done
You want to do that?
in that regard?
Coming from Texas where there were no trees, I had no idea what a forest management plan would be, but we were fortunate to engage with Marty Main, who is very savvy, and he went through our forest and said, you have a very sick forest. So over 10 years we went through and took out a lot of monoculture of white fir with mistletoe, which when you log and intervene in an area, you change the ecosystem. And you take out the biggest and the best. And even with replanting, plantations are not the answer in terms of disease or fire resilience, but we replanted with Doug fir and ponderosa pine, and all the sugar pine has been gone because it requires fire to pop the cones and germinate the seeds. And so at that point, that many years ago, we didn't replant sugar pine, but that was a predominant species here too. So the impacts of that, we call it high-grade logging. After 10 years, we'd gone through all areas and taken out the diseased and dying, and it is not really a salvage logging in terms of salvaging the lumber for commercial use.
Sanitation.
There's more sanitation and rehabilitation
Taking out the
programs.
diseases.
So we've also done some small diameter thinning to cut the understory so that you release the trees to grow better and it also reduces fire danger doing that. And we've had one tiny control burn on one little slope to clear the underbrush.
So we actually do log, we do timber sales, we do commercial timber sales of trees that are commercially saleable. They have to be a certain size log to be merchantable, certain diameter at breast height, and then a certain length. And so we do those commercial loggings in order to keep the forest healthy, and in order to open up the forest, and in order to keep the biggest trees, the best parent trees growing, and to keep them healthy. And if you start getting too close, the trees are too close, then there's actually a lot of interaction that happens, and somebody has to die, and we hope that we're going to keep the parent trees, the better ones, alive. And so that's why we do commercial logging at this point. The thing that's paid off the most for fire resiliency is really having our forests open.
How do you think the monument, from your perspective, is going to help, in some ways at least, reduce some of the effects on wildlife and animals when climate change really starts to accelerate? Do you have any perspective on that at this point?
The big value is that the timberland will be managed for environment and not extraction.
It'll be managed the way we manage ours.
And
The BLM.
cattle,
Yeah.
and cattle can still graze, but they'll be in designated areas, not in wetlands. And hopefully that protection will come to wetland watershed areas. But it's a synchronous move. The expansion is to allow those species room to find higher elevation. And fortunately we're in a higher elevation, and we're just east of Grizzly Peak with its old growth, and so we're part of that higher elevation reach. So we're very...
And hopefully it really will be that connectivity of having continuous movement for all the plants and animals and even trees that are going to have to start moving to higher elevations to maintain temperature, are going to have more space to go. And of course they'll go through our land too, but have more space in the higher elevations to maintain health of the populations.